I hate weather. I mean, what's your weather like right now? Sun? Rain? Snow? Whatever it is, there's a pretty good chance you wish it was something else. Let's say it's the 27th of July. Maybe it's winter where you are, maybe it's summer, whatever. It's probably too hot, too cold, too wet, or too dry. And somewhere else in the world, you can be sure that someone else is getting a dose of weather that they don't want either. Worse yet, global weather patterns connect us all. No, you want to hear just how bad it gets? The air you're breathing right now, yesterday it might have been hundreds or thousands of kilometres away. Maybe in a different country, maybe across an ocean. National Geographic Channel chose a day at random, the 27th of July, to send 15 crews to a dozen countries to capture the variety of the world's weather. They talk to those obsessed, traumatised, or overjoyed by what Mother Nature brought. You've got to stay tuned for this. In fact, watch the whole thing. One day, one world, the weather. If you're a normal human being, relying on your sense of observation, you'd have to think there's no rhyme or reason to weather. But they tell me there is a method to the madness. It's the balance of nature. The natural world's quest for equilibrium. In this case, nature is trying to even out the Earth's temperature, an impossible task. Here's why. All weather is caused by heat from the sun. The sun is the engine that fuels the world's weather machine. As the Earth rotates, the sun heats the Earth's surface irregularly. It's hottest at the equator and coldest at the poles. But nature uses the wind and the oceans like giant fans to push the heat from the equator towards the poles and the cold from the poles toward the equator. All right, so it's the 27th of July. How miserable is your weather today? Let's talk to the people who know, meteorologists. This is a weather-based camp, the CNN Center in Atlanta, Georgia, headquarters of the International Weather Bureau. Meet forecaster Femi Oki. She's been doing this for 10 years. She should get some kind of medal.
I never, ever tire of the weather. I love it. I have a great passion about it. I watch it when I don't have to.
On the morning of the 27th of July, Femi starts the same round-the-world journey she makes every day. Only it's never the same, because weather is never the same.
So now let's check your latest weather conditions. Femi Oki is at the Weather Centre. Femi.
Thanks, Timmy. Starting for you in Australia. Down that eastern coast, you really have been hammered by rainfall and then sweeping across towards the South Island of New Zealand, just in time for your weekend. Does not always seem to happen.
It's the 27th of July, and Australia is going to war. Yeah, that got your attention. OK, stay with me. Battle lines are being drawn by two air masses. One high pressure, one low. High pressure systems usually bring fair, stable weather. Low pressure systems bring unsettled weather, strong winds, rain. When two pressure systems collide, you have a front, named for the front line of a battle. Today, the battlefield is the Australian continent, and the high pressure system controls the field. For the Australians, it seems like a good day to stay indoors. But let me introduce you to a weather nut, Jimmy DeQuara. Jimmy wakes up to 12 degrees Celsius and a strong wind blowing from the east. Most of us would turn over and go back to sleep. For him, this is a reason to get out of bed.
When I wake up in the morning, if I see something that tells me it's severe weather, I'm all active. I'm just off the air. If it's a dull day, it's just normal, clear skies, I just say, oh no, not another one of these.
The wind picks up, the rain pours down. Jimmy races to the coast. He wants to see the action. Jimmy shouldn't be outside today at all. This is a clash of the titans. Torrential rains, winds, waves pounding the shoreline. What, is he crazy? I think the answer is obvious. The battle continues until the high pressure routs the low right out of the area. Where does it go? To New Zealand, some 2,000 kilometres to the east. Still on the 27th of July, the advancing high pressure system chases the low down here. But it's colder in Kiwi land, so it snows instead of rains. In fact, July is the coldest month of the year in New Zealand. It's frigid in the windy, snow-capped Southern Alps, 5 degrees Celsius. And more snow is on the way. But it's ski season, so this makes the skiers happy. I'm glad someone is happy about their weather. Personally, I think these skiers are one lift ticket short of a weekend pass. Here's a weather fact to use at your next party. The atmosphere has levels, like the floors of a building. And the higher up you go, the colder. So if you were in the penthouse, you'd be wearing your parka. Treble Cone Ski Resort is definitely parka territory. It's 2,100 metres up. So, for the most part, this time of year, any moisture in the air that falls as snow. They get a lot of snow. I mean, enough snow to bury a house up to its second floor windows. I'm going to tell you something else to make you the life of the party. Here's the secret of snow. As moist air from the ocean rises, it condenses and freezes on tiny salt and dust particles in the air to form ice crystals. These crystals stick to each other. Eventually, they get heavy enough to fall to the ground. If the temperature is above freezing, the crystals melt and fall as raindrops. If the temperature is below freezing, they fall as snow. Some people find snow pretty. Some find it fun. I don't. Snow can be deadly. And I'm not talking about a badly aimed snowball here. I'm talking avalanche. Here's how it works. Every storm adds another layer of snow to this ice cream cake they call ski slopes. Depending on the temperature, the layer might be as hard as icing or as light as powdered sugar. Put this lopsided cake on the side of a mountain and you'd better start singing Happy Birthday, because it could be your last one. Oh, and sing softly, because the slightest vibration can start the slide. Avalanches kill an average of 150 people worldwide every year. Most victims asphyxiate within 30 minutes of being buried. Often, their warm breath melts the snow, and when the snow refreezes, it creates a suffocating death mask. Today, lead ranger Mark Sev is trying to keep an avalanche from happening. He looks for the areas most likely to slide. This job requires a lot of caution, but I shouldn't have to tell you that. Yes, detonating explosives on an unstable snowpack to unleash a wall of heavy, fast-moving snow is dangerous work. These rangers could be victims of their own artificial disaster. They mark the danger zone with posts and make sure skiers keep their distance. Then they set the explosives and take cover. Okay, this time they escape with their lives. The bombing is a success. The danger is diminished for skiers. I think Mark and his buddies deserve a paid vacation to someplace warm and sunny. That's what they should get. But no, Mark wouldn't like that.
The worse the weather there is, the better, the more I enjoy it. I've spent a lot of my life in the mountains, and it amazes me every bad storm we get, and I just think it's Mother Nature. It's beautiful.
Beautiful? You know where I think Mark should go for vacation? He should go north across the equator, where the world's worst storms are just now winding up to raise a real ruckus. We'll take you there in just a moment. The 27th of July. Sun, snow, drought, downpours. It's nature's attempt to achieve balance using heat and cold, winds and oceans. Is it working? You be the judge.
have so much to talk about on our Asia weather forecast. Surprisingly, as we see our typhoon beginning to move up towards the north and east and really away from Japan, a number of areas have actually seen windy, breezy, wet weather conditions.
We just left snow in New Zealand, near the frozen continent of Antarctica. Now we're in Hong Kong, China, north of the equator, where it's burning hot. How hot is it in Hong Kong? The sun is so strong here, this time of year, that the North Pacific is practically sweating. The people here are definitely sweating. It's 28 degrees Celsius, 78% humidity, 93% chance of rainfall, 100% nasty. But is that bad enough? Not for the weather. Oh no. This is Typhoon Alley. You can almost see the thunderstorms form as the moist air rises from the ocean, like steam from a pot of boiling water. And to make it worse, this is also the time of year when the trade winds from the equator are strongest. They blow a few of these thunderstorms together into a tropical storm, and it whirls across the warm ocean like a buzzsaw in the hands of an amateur handyman, fueling itself by sucking in more warm, moist air. The wind grows, and finally the distinctive eye forms, and you have a typhoon. Another party tidbit. Typhoons are the same weather systems as hurricanes, but they're called typhoons in the North Pacific and hurricanes in the Atlantic. I call it part of the conspiracy to make weather hard to understand. Typhoons can grow to more than 800 kilometres in diameter, enough to blanket the entire United Kingdom. They can pack 360 kilometres per hour winds, faster than a high-speed train. They can dump more than 20 billion tonnes of rain in just 24 hours. I don't even have a comparison for that. Once a typhoon hits land, its fuel supply dries up. But is it ready to give up? Oh no. No, no, no. It's ready to cause a storm surge, which some people say is the most destructive part of a typhoon. You think this thing is slowing down, and then this towering wall of water as high as a house rolls inland, flattening all in its path, like a road grader gone amok. Maybe it's only carrying seaweed and rocks, but more likely it's packing fallen trees, cars, pieces of buildings. Who thinks of these things? This is like a bad Hollywood action movie. Yet this is real. A few days ago, Hong Kong got up close and personal with one of these monster typhoons. It spawned over the Pacific and roared towards land. But guess what? There are people in Hong Kong who actually like extreme weather. Meet Clarence Fong.
It has become a habit so that I wake up every day and just switch on the computer and then get into my website to see the weather first. Even sometimes earlier than going to the toilet to wash my face.
That day, Clarence probably didn't wash his face until noon at the earliest. The storm was called Typhoon U2, and it emptied the streets. There are 5 typhoon ratings: 1, 3, 8, 9 and 10. The higher the number, the faster the wind. U2 clocked in at number 8. Every year, about 100 tropical storms form. Around 30 make it to full-force typhoons. Clarence and his renegade friends hoped for the worst. But did they wait in the safety of their living rooms watching Femi on TV? No, they were out, measuring the effect of the storm. They live for this. They made it up to the mountain. It was raining, it was blowing. This is what they like. But tracking a typhoon is difficult, and the storm snuck off to the south. Hong Kong was spared, this time. How scary does it get? Just weeks ago, it was a lot scarier, especially for Ardis Tang. He's a member of the Hong Kong Air Force, a veteran of rescue missions, a good man to know on a stormy day in Hong Kong. He raced to the rescue as torrential rains flooded parts of the city, forcing people onto their roofs in a desperate attempt to escape the rising waters. Rescue helicopters and hovercrafts trawled for survivors. It was one of the largest storms in 2 decades. It was a mess.
You might expect a modern city like Hong Kong, people do not require to worry about the weather. But it basically is the opposite way. You got people suffering from hypothermia, you got people suffering from heat stroke, because people are not prepared for any extreme weather change.
In another part of the world, people are actually hoping for nasty weather. Not just the weather wackos, but normal people. They depend on nasty weather for their livelihoods. Of course, these people also hold weddings for frogs. We'll get to that.
Rainfall still carrying around Orissa on that eastern side of India and into Bangladesh, across Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia. You know the story. Unfortunately, the monsoon continues.
The sun that's causing typhoons over the North Pacific is also causing people in India to fixate on storms. But they're hoping the storms will arrive. The 27th of July is the middle of the Asian summer monsoon season. In Cherrapunji, India, it's muggy and hot. For many years, Cherrapunji was in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the highest annual rainfall. Sometimes, residents don't see the sun for 2 months. This rain is so irritating that even the British colonists left because they couldn't stand the weather. Actually, there's little rain for most of the year, but in the summer monsoon season, Cherrapunji can get up to 1,000 centimetres of rainfall in just 3 months. A rainforest at its wettest gets only half that much in a whole year. The Asian monsoon is strongest in the summer months, when the sun's intense direct rays heat the land hotter than the ocean. India becomes like a stove burner, radiating warm air that rises, leaving room below for cooler, moist air to rush in from the ocean, creating wind. The water vapour is forced upward, where it cools, creating condensation high above, leading to thunderstorms that release torrents of rain. More than 2 billion people rely on these rains for their water supply. Their economy and culture depend on them. Cherrapunji lies near the state of Assam, the largest tea-growing region in the world, with a harvest worth nearly $420 million annually. Tea plants need a steady stream of rain. Even a small decrease could devastate the crop. These people, they love rain. They celebrate rain. And during the monsoon, they should get rain. But nothing in the weather is that predictable. This year, the monsoon rains have been less than expected. People are worried about losing their tea crop. They decide to plead their case to the rain gods. These gods have particular preferences. It seems what makes them happy is when 2 frogs are married. In Assam, legend has it that during dry spells, joining 2 frogs in marriage brings rain. So people conduct grand ceremonies following Hindu marriage rituals. Whole villages rejoice. The frogs are named Barun and Brishti, after the rain god and the rain, of course. Local families adopt them. Armalu Katoki is honoured to be the frog bride's mother.
পানীটো আমাক বিয়াত প্ৰয়োজন সেইকাৰণে আমাৰ বৰষুণটো লাগে আৰু অকল চাহ খেতিয়ে নহয় ধান খেতি আৰু লগতে বেলেগ শাক পাচলি প্ৰত্যেকটো কাৰণে আমাক পানী প্ৰয়োজন সেইকাৰণে আমাক বৰষুণটো লাগে
And they take this seriously. They decorate the frogs and purify them in a bath. The frog groom's family invites the reluctant bride to the mandap, the marriage altar, and the frog arrives for the ceremony. For several hours, a Hindu priest performs traditional rituals, uniting the pair in the sanctity of marriage. People offer prayers, songs, and mantras until the couple is finally pronounced frog and wife. Guests shower the newlywed amphibians with blessings and gifts of money. The priest takes the couple to spend their honeymoon in a nearby pond. Soon after, the clouds over Cherrapunji turn dark and rain begins to pour. may just be coincidence, but in Assam, the frog marriage is not taken lightly. The monsoon that brings life to Cherrapunji brings tragedy to the Indian state of Orissa. Over the last few years, monsoon floods have killed up to 1,000 people a year and damaged millions of acres of crops. Today, the temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. The threat of rain is constant. To make matters worse, flooding hundreds of kilometres away caused engineers to open the sluice gates of a huge dam. And today, that water is flooding this valley. This is weather at its worst. Overnight, the river rose to 67 feet. Its danger mark, then 68, 69, 70 feet. Making matters even worse, the rain keeps falling. It goes from bad to worse. Rangaraju Balakrishnan, a state relief commissioner, has to get food and supplies to the flood victims.
We are trying to mobilize more kind of help from the outside, and we need to mobilize the record number of boats and people to handle the situation.
The Indian Air Force is also on the case. They organise airdrops to the more remote locations. It's no better in the low-lying regions of Bari. They're like islands in a rising lake. Thousands of lives are at risk and the clouds aren't lifting. The relief office in Jaipur rushes to the rescue. Workers dispatch boats and trucks loaded with rations. Men and materials move fast, but they may not be fast enough. Somehow, the rescue effort is a success. India hasn't always been so lucky. Extreme weather is nothing new here, especially in the state of Orissa. Last year, the land was scorched by drought. The year before, a super cyclone tore through the state with devastating results. Had enough of water? Here's a change. Not for the better, but it's a change. As India is deluged with rain, the desert just to the west is parched. I know, you're thinking, it's a desert, it's always parched. No, this desert is actually having a drought.
In the Middle East, you'll barely see any little bits of moisture. What you might just see is a little bit of high clouds across this area. In fact, most of this area, from a year-to-year basis, is suffering from drought weather conditions, and the dry weather conditions really don't help the situation. So Kabul, 33, Baghdad, 49, Tel Aviv coming at 33 degrees in Celsius.
The cause, as usual, is the sun. It fuels a hot, dry wind from the arid Sahara in North Africa across the Mediterranean Sea. In Israel, they call this seasonal wind the sharav, but they might as well call it the sponge, because it soaks up all the moisture in its path. On the 27th of July, a water shortage of emergency proportions grips Israel. Here, on the Sea of Galilee, it's 30 degrees Celsius, hot and bone dry. More than half of Israel is desert. It's located in one of 6 desert belts. These are huge high-pressure systems that wrap around the globe at certain latitudes. The good news is they keep the area perpetually dry and sunny. The bad news is they keep it dry and sunny. They're kind of like guard dogs who take their job a little too seriously. They never let the rain-bearing low-pressure systems come close. Unfortunately, they don't guard against the hot, dry winds that rob moisture from the soil, the animals and the plants. About the only thing that hasn't run dry in this region is hope. Professor Safariel manages the Institute for Desert Research in the Negev Desert.
Our mission is to find those aspects or attributes of the desert that, as a matter of fact, not only are beneficial to humankind, but also have an advantage.
They're making solar energy and vitamins and bacteria that make salmon fish pink, and I thought salmon were pink to start with. They found ways to turn the hot, harsh sun into cold, hard cash. This is a tribute to human ingenuity. There are typhoons in the Pacific, floods in India, drought in Israel. Blame it on the sun that drives the world weather bus. But I'm ready to get off someplace where it's just plain pleasant for a change. Unfortunately, we aren't there yet.
Towards southern Africa, fairly dry along the western side. Some wet weather just exiting off that southeastern coastline of South Africa, and windy as well. This used to be known as the Cape of Storms because of the windy weather and the stormy weather there.
The 27th of July, Jeffreys Bay, South Africa, 10 degrees Celsius with an offshore morning wind. Every serious surfer on the planet knows this as J-Bay, home of the perfect wave. Jeffreys Bay sits near the southern tip of the African continent, where ocean currents and strong winds collide. There's a cold gale howling off the coast of Antarctica and warm breezes drifting south from the Indian Ocean. As the wind and water meet, they create low-pressure systems, which produce swells that crash into the southern coast of Africa. What am I talking about? Swells? These are wicked waves. This place is infamous amongst sailors for its deadly storms, but famous amongst surfers for the ride of a lifetime. And the 27th of July is about the best time to surf J-Bay, so they tell me. The annual Billabong Pro Surfing competition was held here 2 days ago, and surfers came from around the world. But Brad Bicknell is local. He's a professional surfer, currently ranked #2 in South Africa. He knows what he's talking about.
The winter months are the best months for it, you know, sort of from May down to August, September, when those big cold fronts are coming through. And people come from all around the world to come and surf this place. You know, they check the weather, and they all descend upon this little coastal town around this time of the year. You know, it's a small little village, but when the waves turn on, you know, it's the best place in the world to be.
Oh yeah, the best place. This bay has places named Boneyards, Impossibles, the Albatross. But for these people, the worse the better. That's how they like it.
When you're lying in your bed at night, you're just dreaming of surfing those waves and just dreaming of those big winds, those big southwesterlies. And, you know, you hope to wake up the next morning to some slotted lines coming into the bay. So, yeah, we dream about surfing in the weather all the time.
A dream vacation spot. Maybe for Brad. You want to hear the kind of weather I dream about? Sunny, sandy, seaside, and yes, after what we've seen, there is actually a place in the world where the sun is our friend. Here it is. Tenerife, the Canary Islands, just off Africa's west coast. The ocean currents that rage around the Cape of Good Hope become quieter to the north. On the 27th of July, it's 27 degrees Celsius with gorgeous blue skies, the height of tourist season. Now, these are people who know their weather. But you know what? This idyllic place has been infiltrated by, yes, a weather fanatic, an amateur meteorologist. His hobby is tracking Mother Nature's ill-conceived quest for balance. For him, this weather is boring. Perfect is boring to him. This patient woman is his wife.
It was pretty difficult to persuade him that most normal people go on holiday in the summertime, because Trevor was always keen to go on holiday in what he thought were the most boring times of the year.
Dr. Trevor Harley is a senior lecturer of psychology at Dundee University in the United Kingdom. He's set up his own weather station at home in Scotland to automatically record the weather so he doesn't miss anything while he's away. That's the only reason his long-suffering wife got him to come here at all.
Now, I love severe weather events, and the prospect of being away when something extraordinary is quite daunting. Suppose there's a torrential downpour when I'm away. That idea is quite upsetting to me, as I'm going to be missing it. Suppose there's a severe thunderstorm when I'm away, or there's an extremely high temperature.
Now we're going to talk to one of Trevor's heroes, professional meteorologist Bill Giles. Bill probably thinks he's lucky to live in the UK, where they have some of the most changeable weather in the world, instead of in the Canary Islands, where it's actually nice outside most of the time. Today, on the 27th of July, it's 20 degrees Celsius in London, with early morning fog. Bill Giles is the former head of the BBC Weather Centre. He's been a broadcast meteorologist for nearly 3 decades. He's so revered that in 1995, Queen Elizabeth gave him an OBE, making him an Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I think anyone who tries to predict the weather for 30 years deserves to be king. Bill Giles' OBE has seen modern technology make forecasting much more accurate. But this is too easy.
And looking down at the Canaries for the 27th of July, really not too bad. Quite a bit of sunshine on the western islands there.
Sunshine in the Canaries. Now that's a challenge. Let me guess. Will it be cold in Antarctica too? And Trevor? He doesn't give up. Armed with only a piece of ribbon, he forecasts the way.
Once you work out where due north is, you can use this to estimate the wind direction. Today, it's a northwesterly.
Trade winds, the winds that blow there most of the year, certainly shown up on this very well, some quite strong northerly winds.
Trade winds are a perfect example of how Mother Nature tries to balance the whole thing out. They're the steadiest, most reliable winds on Earth, caused by the most basic weather event. When hot, humid air near the equator rises, it's replaced by denser, cooler air that's sucked in from the north and south. The winds trade heat for cold, just like your thermostat at home. The heat comes up when it's cold, the air conditioning when it's hot. It's great when it's working, at home and in nature. As for Trevor, he still can't stop himself.
It's almost an emotional connection between him and the weather that I've observed and sometimes felt a little bit excluded from.
It isn't just recording the weather temperature and the weather records that's important. It's also experiencing it, enjoying it.
But this is the sort of thing, the enthusiasm that he has, it can be infectious, but you do have to be prepared to suffer as well.
Boy, has she got it right. Suffering. Weather always means suffering for someone in the world. And sometimes misery loves company. A trip around the world shows that weather is different from place to place, even though weather systems are interconnected. Trouble is, these systems only rarely bring what either place really wants. Here's an example. The winds that blow from the coasts of southern Europe and Africa to South America took Christopher Columbus to the Americas around this time of year 500 millennium ago. That was good for him, but during July, these winds are so strong that Sahara desert dust has been known to create haze in the Caribbean.
These purple lines here are big clusters of thunderstorms or showers or tropical waves heading on into this section of South America and Central America as well. Very active time of year for weather. A lot of rain around, I have to say. And down towards the far southern tip of the continent, you can see the telltale signs. The isobars packed closely together. Seriously bad hair day here. You can see the weather front stretching from the Pacific across towards the Atlantic. That will produce snow into the mountains between Chile and Argentina.
On the western side of South America, it's no better. We're at the tip of the South American continent, Cape Horn. It's a lot like South Africa's Cape of Good Hope, where those surfers were riding the waves. This place is even further south, closer to Antarctica, and it's a den of low-pressure systems, unstable weather. Unstable? Let me amend that. This is home to some of the most legendary storms on the planet. You think I'm exaggerating? No, I'm not. The 27th of July, Ushuaia, Argentina. It's 5 degrees Celsius and overcast. Ushuaia is the world's most southerly city, one of only a few located below the 50th latitude. In the midst of winter, this place is always threatened with sudden disaster, on land or at sea. Oh, it can't be as bad as all that, can it? Let's put it this way. There's an old mariner's saying, below the roaring 40s there is no law. Below the 50s, there is no God. The currents at this latitude are known as the Furious 50s. The Furious 50s, this is like a traffic circle for wind currents, all driven by crazed cab drivers. Winds fly around the world at the 50th latitude with no land in their way until they get to the tip of South America. Then, the Andes Mountains force them south around Cape Horn, where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet. Meanwhile, other winds, cold winds, howl off the frozen continent of Antarctica. They all careen around here, causing chaotic weather and some tragic maritime accidents. No one should live in a place like this, but they do. People who like to gamble with their lives. And the forecasters, they'd do just as well with a roulette wheel as Doppler radar. It seems pretty mild today, but people who live here never get too relaxed. Especially the forecasters. Gabriel Caramaniel is a meteorologist stationed at the Ushuaia Air Force Base. The World Weather Organization and the Argentine government set up this station to predict Ushuaia's unpredictable weather. Good luck.
Hay continuos pasajes de lo que los meteorólogos llamamos frentes fríos y hay cambios muy bruscos de las condiciones del tiempo en periodos muy cortos. Así durante un día uno puede amanecer con condiciones de buen tiempo, con cielos relativamente despejados, y hacia mitad del día el acercamiento de un frente frío muy rápido provoca que se nuble muy rápidamente, que el viento se incremente muy rápido su intensidad y que provoque precipitaciones tanto en forma de lluvia como de nieve.
Meet Julio Brunet. He's a seasoned sailor. He always checks the weather forecast before he leaves the harbour. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe he shouldn't leave the harbour. I wouldn't, after what happened to him earlier this season. Julio set out on a beautiful day. Blue sky, calm water, along with another boat bound for Cape Horn. All was going well, and then they left the harbour. Seemingly out of nowhere, fierce winds came up, followed by rough seas. It was so disorienting that Julio lost sight of the other boat. As he struggled to keep his own vessel afloat, the clouds turned dark and rain poured down. He dropped anchor. The wind blew more than 145 kilometers per hour, as fast as a racing car.
El viento soplaba tan fuerte que no podíamos respirar casi. De frente al viento nos ahogábamos. Después teníamos toda la boca llena de agua salada.
The anchor line of the boat snapped and the boat went adrift. This is the kind of thing that happens a lot in the Furious 50s. After 2 hours of this, the storm stopped as quickly as it had started. The two ships were finally able to re-enter the harbour. But will he stay in the harbour now? Probably not. Moving north up the South American continent, the weather is calm. And there, that's a problem. Sao Paulo, Brazil. The 27th of July, the largest city in South America, third in the entire world. More than 17 million people live and work here. Brazil, okay? Hot and humid, lush vegetation, home of the world's largest tropical rainforest. Not the kind of place where drought is a problem. But in the last few years, Brazil has suffered such a chronic shortfall in rain that reservoirs have sunk to their lowest levels ever. On this day, people here are facing an inconvenience not generally associated with weather. They can't turn on their lights. Nearly 97% of Brazil's electricity comes from its 600 dams. Brazil invested heavily in hydroelectric power because they get what seems like an endless supply of rain. I mean, what is nature doing here? These are people who actually tried to work with the weather. Then suddenly, nature closes the tap. No rain. This stubborn drought is pushing the national grid towards complete collapse, threatening to plunge Latin America's largest country and economy into darkness. Homes and businesses are making mandatory energy cutbacks. The only option is forced blackouts. If it gets much worse, they may have to hold a frog marriage. The 27th of July, and here's some weather ordeals we've seen around the world. From these, you'll see that weather is really just simple physics, which you'd know if you'd been paying attention in physics class. Apparently, the people in Atlanta weren't, but we'll get to that. In Australia, we saw a storm caused by two fronts meeting on the battlefield we call the atmosphere. In Hong Kong, we saw that when the sun heats the ocean, warm air rises like steam from a pot of boiling water, which can fuel typhoons. In India, rising moist air over a heated landmass caused monsoons. Simple physics, if you can call physics simple. That's how nature makes weather. But in Atlanta, ordinary residents are making weather. And this is no frog marriage. Here's what's happening. North America is the continent with the most severe weather on the planet. The most severe. The 27th of July. The cool air off the northern coast of South America mixes with the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, bathing the southeast section of the US in warm, moist air. Sounds pleasant, but it isn't. It produces over 1,000 thunderstorms a year. And Mother Nature has some help creating these storms from us. It's 27 degrees Celsius in Atlanta, Georgia. These kids have the right idea. The adults, however, do not. They've accidentally gotten into the business of creating weather. Maybe they should have been taking notes in physics class, but no. They've built their weather machine out of asphalt, concrete, steel and glass. Man-made structures and paved roads trap heat in urban areas. The temperature downtown can be hotter than in the surrounding countryside. It's called the urban heat island effect. As the sun beats down, cities and suburbs with little vegetation absorb the heat and hold it like the bricks of a fireplace. When cooler, denser air from surrounding rural areas rushes in, it creates wind that drives the warm air up through the chimney. Thunderstorms form when the vapour in the air cools higher up in the atmosphere. Essentially, the city becomes its own ecosystem. It's amazing what we've found in just one day of the world's weather. I mean, how could there be so many weather crises on one planet in one day? As we end our trip around the world, another day has already started in New Zealand. It's already the 28th of July, and I personally am way too tired to go around again. I'll leave that to Mother Nature and CNN international forecaster Femi Oki. She's ending her own world tour for the day, only to do it all again tomorrow. Me, I'm waiting until Mother Nature gets the balance of hot and cold, wind and water right. That's when I'll start to like the weather. I won't hold my breath. For now, that's one day. One world, the weather.